Hey, what's up, guys? Ken here from the Retro Toy Sculpts channel in Malaysia. So, Ramen Toy, they've just recently put out the 80s Commander set. 80s Commanders being aka the Centurions. This set actually arrived, I think, in a lot of people's hands shortly before Christmas last year. A couple of my friends ordered the set as well here in Malaysia, and I think they just started to recently get them over the last couple of days. So this initial set has been reaching out to collectors everywhere. Everyone who pre-ordered the initial wave, and now there's an announcement here on Ramen's website. On Facebook, actually, they've mentioned here that there's going to be a new set, all right, that's coming in April of this year. And this is going to be an 80s Commanders 3-pack set, which has all the 3 figures re-released, but this time with 80s themed color decor, new head sculpts, and new helmet sculpts. Shortly after this announcement went out on their Facebook page, they put out another photo update, and this one appears to be the new decored figures that they were talking about, with the revised facial sculpts that now have the characters looking like the characters that we remember them from the 80s, as in Max Ray, Jake Rockwell, and Ace McCloud. I was looking at this photo here and I was just thinking to myself, shit, I do hope that these are still early prototype images, because honestly, these kind of look pretty bad too, okay? I mean, the sculpts look pretty uncomfortable, from what I'm looking at here. Now, I don't know what is it exactly about these expressions, but it looks like all 3 of them are straining really hard to look serious. Okay, like they're really trying to pull off the whole heroic and stoic look, And it just seems like the sculpting here is really struggling to capture those expressions. From a distance, I mean, they definitely look recognizable as the characters that you remember them to be. And I do think that it's great that Ramen Toy is going back and revisiting the classic looks of these characters, because the initial wave of 80s Commanders figures, technically, they're sort of like bootlegs in the sense that they were not licensed. All right, and they couldn't actually use the same characters. They were just more like homages. All right, they had the same sort of feel, the same sort of theme as the classic characters, but they all had different names. I think that one or all of them were actually supposed to be Koreans, I think, this time around. But these are definitely the characters that we know from the classic show. And I like the fact that they're definitely going for a more cartoon accurate look here. The colors on all of their gear and weapon systems are definitely brighter and much more colorful, okay, just like how you remembered them from the cartoon. And you do see the likenesses of Max Ray, Ace McCloud, and to some degree, I suppose, Jake Rockwell, but Jake here is probably the worst of the bunch, okay? This seems to be an area that Ramen Toy is probably still struggling with, when it comes to the facial sculpts, because the first wave of figures also received a ton of criticism in this area. Now, initially, when Ramen Toy announced the Centurions sometime last year and the announcement of these figures were being made, I was super excited, okay, because Centurions is like one of those properties that was never ever revisited, since their heyday in the mid-80s, okay, unlike a lot of the other properties which have somehow or the other faced some kind of resurgence, all right, in the 20 or so years since then. But Centurions has never had that, okay? And this is the first time anybody was seeing any kind of news related to the property, and it was pretty big. Then we started to see the images of the prototypes that were being shared online, and I was thinking to myself that, holy hell, those sculpts look pretty awful, okay? And I think a lot of people felt that way too, but they still decided to go ahead, and they were just so excited about the property. They felt that probably when the final thing was in their hands, it would turn out to be a lot better. And then what happened was that the thing did end up in a lot of people's hands as of about a month ago, and it seems like from the earliest wave of reviews, it was like far worse than they actually feared, okay? It was just something that they were completely unprepared for. Now, based off those early reviews, besides the facial sculpts alone, which a lot of people felt were pretty poor translations, some even went as far to say that they were really atrocious, okay? But I think aside from that, a lot of people also were commenting on how the joints in the figures appeared to be pretty loose, and the figures were missing some critical articulation points, such as there being no ab crunch and no ankle pivot, and how the necks couldn't properly move with the helmets on, stuff like that. And then also I did see a comment about how the figures were pretty small for 16 scale figures, so they apparently don't really scale up too well to stuff in your collection that may be, for instance, stuff like Marvel Legends or the DC Universe stuff. So yeah, I mean, these figures were taking a pretty serious knock. Now, I would have definitely wanted to get a set of these for myself, but like I said, when I saw the earlier production photos, I thought I would just hang on a bit and just wait, and now I'm pretty thankful that I did. I will say, however, that I am a fan of the window box style packaging boxes and the way they just sort of like laid out everything with the graphics on one end and the clear window to the figure on the other end, and everything just looks pretty cool. Okay, I mean, in that sense, I love the fonts. Okay, the 80s Commanders fonts look fantastic. I like the use of the grid lines and the blue and purplish background. Everything about this, the layout, the fonts, and especially the grid lines, everything just screams of the 1980s. Okay, anytime you get something with grid lines, it just reminds you of a 1980s futuristic toy property. Okay, Mask, the intro, it had grid lines. Transformers season 1, grid lines. So yeah, definitely. I would say that the packaging on these figures are clear winner. I just wish that the actual action figures themselves turned out to be better. As I understand it, these are not exactly very cheap either. I think a lot of fans understand that these were made by an independent company that was pretty much just starting out. But the fact of the matter remains that I think a set of these, if you took them on pre-order, like a friend of mine did, he mentioned that the thing came in at about 700 Malaysian ringgit. So that works out to roughly over, just maybe about 125, close to about 150 USD for a set of 3 figures. That's a pretty steep investment. Okay, so yeah, I mean, if they had produced a final product that was just above average, above what we saw in the production photos, I think a lot of people would have been really happy. As it is, this thing is something that a lot of people are kind of wishing probably that they didn't get their hands on. Okay, and then now comes the announcement that we have improved figures coming in such a short window after the initial release of this earlier set. Now, what I'm curious about is all those people that actually purchased the first set of figures, and they're kind of like only now starting to receive them, and then suddenly comes this announcement like just yesterday that there's going to be a new revised version of figures that is obviously what fans would prefer. Okay, fans would definitely prefer to get this newer set that has the more cartoon accurate deco, the more classic looks to the characters. Okay, the classic faces that we recognize from the cartoon and the original toy line from Kenner, and all this stuff just looks a lot better. So I just kind of wonder, how do the people who actually purchased that initial set feel about this? All right, I mean, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna get like 2 sets, or are you gonna try to sell off the initial wave? Yeah, so what are you gonna do? It would be great if actually they re-release the figures again with alternate weapon systems. Okay, just like the original show, all of the figures had alternate weapon systems. All right, but that's, I think, a little bit too much to ask for at this point, since the company is probably still trying to recoup its investment. But that's an option there. All right, if you want to make people go in on a purchase a second time, give them something a little bit more. All right, and these the new wave of figures apparently is being listed as a 3-pack. So I suppose they come together in one all new box. I suppose they're not going to be available separately, so I do wonder how that's going to look too. Let me know what you think of this, guys. Let me know if if you got the earlier set of 80s Commanders figures from Ramen Toys. Okay, if you have them in hand, what you think of them? Let me know what you think of this announcement of the new revised figures that are coming out. Let me know in the comments what you think about it. Let me know if you collected the original Centurions figures from the 1980s, because those were fantastic. But I gotta say that those are actually some of the hardest action figures to recollect on the secondary market for real. If you're trying to look for a set these days, okay, man, it's gonna really cost you. And they come with so many separate parts. So if you try to get them loose, that's a challenge in itself. So hit me up in the comments. I look forward to your thoughts and views, and I'll catch all of you guys again real soon with more content. Take care out there.